What we're looking at here is a 1915 map of the Gallipoli campaign. This, in some respects, is one of the keys to understanding Gallipoli, as Professor Doyle will tell you on Twitter, is that when they first landed at Gallipoli, they had maps dating back to the Crimean War. Now that was close on 60 years before the Great War, and they were highly inaccurate, which is why there were quite a few problems with navigation and landing people in the right place and so on. And the map that we've got here is one of the maps that was produced later on in the campaign. It's a 1 to 20,000 map. We can just see at the top there, Dardanelles scale 1 to 20,000, and it shows some of the positions. We've got the fort at Settled by Ear just here. We've got some of the British landing beaches at Cape Helles, looking across to where the River Clyde came in just here at V Beach, and the high ground today here where the Helles Memorial is. We can see Hunter Western Hill marked there. We've got W Beach around the corner here, and what looks like port facilities, because by the stage this map was created that was the case. And we've got some of the other landing beaches up here as well, X Beach, Gully Beach, and up towards Y Beach. And then inland, there's no trenches marked on this map, but we do have the village of Crithea, and the front line was coming across here at that particular point, roughly. And it shows how only towards the end of the campaign did the Allies have a proper system of mapping. So we'll keep that as our backdrop, and we'll move on to some objects. First of all, dog tags, identity discs. The soldiers who went to Gallipoli only had one of these around their neck to start off with. That's a red identity disc. This one was actually worn by a seaman in the Royal Navy, and on there was their name, rank, number, their religion, and in the case of men in the army, sometimes even their battalion and other details as well. This, amongst many of the Commonwealth troops who served at Gallipoli, some of them, we'll leave that one there, a lot of Commonwealth troops had an identity disc like this one as well. This is one that was worn by an Australian soldier, 24th Battalion AIF, and it's typical of the aluminium discs that were worn during the campaign by many soldiers there. One of the veterans that I interviewed who was at Gallipoli said that these red tags did actually leak dye, so they got your uniform dirty, which, as you can imagine, was not pleasing to sergeant majors. So this type of disc seems much more common, not just by Australians, but indeed by British units as well. So a couple of dog tags, these things worn around the neck, only one. When a soldier was killed, dog tag is removed, and of course that means a body on a battlefield is then buried with nothing to say who he was, which is one of the reasons why there are so many missing, not just from the Gallipoli campaign, but from many campaigns and battles along the Western Front. So that's dog tags, just move those to one side. Another little Gallipoli related object is this thing. This is an Imperial Service badge, and these were given to soldiers of the Territorial Force, the Territorial Army we'd call them now, before the First World War, to indicate that they had signed up for Imperial service, that they'd elected to serve outside of the United Kingdom, overseas on active service. You got extra money for that, but the catch was, in time of war, you could be posted off to a far-flung corner of the British Empire. And many soldiers were proud of this, wore this when the war came about in 1914, and many of them wore them to Gallipoli, because I've seen these in museums and private collections on the Gallipoli campaign battlefields, indicating that soldiers had taken them off to the conflict. To give you some idea of how they were worn, got a wartime photograph here. We can see a soldier wearing one of those badges just above his right hand pocket there, so that gives you an idea of how they were actually worn. They were not numbered, they were not named, although I have seen some examples where people did put their names on the back, but these were little badges that soldiers who had joined the Territorials before the war were very proud to have. And in many cases it was badges that would pretty much ensure they would be taken off to Gallipoli. Thanks for that question. Do I know his name? In this particular case I don't. Sadly, like many images of the Great War, it remains an anonymous, unknown soldier of World War One. So that's the Imperial Service Badge, and for those just joining us, have a quick look at that, see if we can see that a bit better. On the back, let's have a look at the back. You can see it's just fastened by a very basic pin. So pull that to one side. Commemoration. Every soldier that fought at Gallipoli was awarded one of these, along with the British War Medal and the Victory Medal. It's the 1914-15 Star, awarded to soldiers who served on active service from 23rd of November 1914 through to the 31st of December 1915. This particular example, they're all named on the reverse. I suspect this isn't going to come out desperately, but you can, if I tint it towards the light a bit, you can see that there's a name on there. It's a soldier of the King's Own Scottish Borderers, and this particular chap was a veteran of the Boer War, was still serving when the war broke out, came with the King's Own Scottish Borderers to Egypt, and then landed at on the coast of Gallipoli and was killed in the first 24 hours of the fighting. His name is commemorated on the Hellas Memorial. The whereabouts of his other medals from that period are not known. That's what was issued to men of the Navy in the Royal Naval Division, men at sea with the Royal Navy, and also the Army. But Gallipoli was an amphibious operation, so we mustn't forget the Merchant Navy, and this is a Mercantile Marine medal. It's awarded to my wife's great-grandfather, who served and was indeed blinded in the Gallipoli campaign. The Merchant Navy operated a vital role in the 1915 campaign, keeping the troops supplied. A soldier was only as good as the bullets he could fire from his gun, the shells he could fire from his artillery, and to survive he needed food, and he needed water, and he needed provisions, and that's what the Merchant Navy brought to the Gallipoli area. So an often forgotten aspect of the Gallipoli campaign, but important one. Those who died at Gallipoli were obviously commemorated in the cemeteries or memorials, but the next of kin of those who died was sent a memorial plaque. And this is an example of one to a man who died at Gallipoli. It's, if I just put my hand on there, you can see how big it is. It's often referred to as a dead man's penny or a widow's penny. It's made of bronze. There's a little box here with the name of the soldier in this case, Frederick Lucknow Joy. That's a good son of the Empire and a good name of a son of the Empire. He was a regular soldier in the Hampshire Regiment, killed in the Gallipoli fighting and buried on the Gallipoli Peninsula. This was sent to his next of kin after the war. These were made in a special plaque factory with such pure bronze that the plaque factory went bust. So the Woolwich Arsenal then took over the production of these things. And I haven't actually checked to see if this is one. It is one. I don't know if we can see this. I'll try and tip it. There's a little tiny indentation you can see on the plaque. Can you see that, guys? Little tiny mark there, and that is a circle with a W and a line through the centre peak of the W, indicating that it was made by the Woolwich Arsenal. It doesn't make it any rarer or any more valuable or anything like that, or any less valuable, come to that. It just indicates it's a later production plaque made by the Woolwich Arsenal. So if you've got one of these at home, flip it over next time you're looking at it, and you might well see that little indication on there telling you where it was made. Photographs of the Gallipoli campaign are interesting. There were no official photographers at that time. A lot of soldiers took cameras with them, and this little thing is a Kodak photo album that belonged to an officer of the Royal Scots who took his camera with him to Egypt and then Gallipoli and took some photographs. So if we turn it over, we can see the sort of thing that's inside. We've got pictures taken in Egypt of the men of the 5th Royal Scots Territorial Battalion. the officers sitting on the side of an embankment during a march, some of the men, and then it moves to the Gallipoli battlefields. We've got some photographs of them here. On the Gallipoli Peninsula is the caption for that one. You can see a sandbag dugout, and believe it or not, the rather bedraggled looking soldier. We'll see if we can get in a little bit closer. Is that okay? Can you see that? Believe it or not, that is an officer standing there. And this, I think, gives us a bit of an insight into the sort of dress that soldiers wore at Gallipoli. They went into the battlefields there wearing their normal kit, but they adapted very, very quickly indeed, because it was so hot, beyond the experience of most men, the heat of the Gallipoli Peninsula. And the album is full of photographs like this, showing the rough and ready positions that they had. Behind this is on the Hellas front and also on the Anzac front, doing work. It was difficult, of course, to take cameras up into the front line and do things, but obviously because there was the ever-presence of the enemy, and at Gallipoli you were very close to the enemy. But this is typical of the sort of things that were soldiers took photographs at Gallipoli. Probably an Anzac there, passing by a barricade. We've got, for example, this area. This is probably, I think, Monash Gully, loading pack mules. Mules very, very important during the Gallipoli campaign. And then battalion water carts. Water, very, very important part of surviving at Gallipoli. The provision of fresh water. The lack of it in the early stages led to sickness on an unprecedented scale. So this is sort of typical. Now, I know a lot of people who follow me on Twitter like the story of the Indian troops in the Great War, and this is a photograph I think I've published before, but it shows an officer of an Indian labour unit, I suspect, giving orders to Indian labourers who were waiting to carry material and equipment, food, rations, whatever, up towards the front line area. Just as the French at Gallipoli are forgotten, I suspect the role of Indian troops, to a certain degree, are forgotten, although I was reading the other day that there is a book coming out about that side of the campaign. So this really, in some respects, because there were no as such official photographers at Gallipoli, it's little albums like this one. We've got some pictures of Turkish prisoners there, for example, that really give us a bit of an insight into what Gallipoli was all about. This officer survived, and this is taken on one of the ships later on. They moved off to Palestine later on in the campaign, and then some photographs from his R&R. There's a few more Gallipoli pictures in there as well. So that gives you a bit of an idea of what the sort of photo side of it was. We showed the 1914-15 star in a bit of isolation, so let's have a whole medal group to have a look at. This is the medals of a veteran of the Gallipoli campaign. We've got the 1914-15 star on the left, British War Medal, Victory Medal. He then served in the Second World War in a training capacity with the Royal Marines, so he's got the Defence and the War Medal. And because of his long service, he had the Blue Peter, the Navy Long Service Medal. All of those are names, and this chap served with the Royal Marine Light Infantry during the Gallipoli campaign. But those three there, Pipsqueak and Wilfrid, they're typical of the medals awarded to men who fought at Gallipoli in 1915. So again, a bit of a periscope experiment. So I hope you found that of interest. A few little objects. I think there is the opportunity with Periscope to have little chats like this. What name of this guy? Very good question. We'll have a look on the edge. I don't know if you can see as with the others. I think that might be a little bit too close. Good question. Bear with me. Private W.T. Cooper, Royal Marine Light Infantry. There we go, you can just see that on there. W.T. Cooper, Royal Marine Light Infantry, and he's from the Chatham division. So he trained at Chatham before he came over. So that was it for this afternoon.